My wife walked into court with edited recordings, a top divorce lawyer, and tears that could win an Oscar. She said I abused her. She said I controlled every dollar, every breath, every move. She wanted half my business, the house I built, and a paycheck for the rest of my life. The judge believed her. Everyone did. The room was heavy with silence until I stood up and said, "Your Honor." She forgot who installed the cameras. That's the moment everything broke. The illusion, the lies, and the woman I thought I knew. I'm Ethan Cole, 32, and for months I was painted as a monster in the city where I built everything from scratch. My company, my marriage, my reputation all hanging by a thread woven from edited clips and fake tears. I lost sleep clients and the small piece of trust I had left in people. But I didn't lose the truth. And the truth, as I learned, keeps better records than love ever could. Before I share my story, I want to know you are here with me. Just say listening in the comments or let me know where you are. I love hearing how far my story can reach. Sometimes even the smallest connection can make a story feel heard. Thank you. And now, here's my story. If my story speaks to you, please consider subscribing to the channel. It helps more than you know, because behind every view is someone like me once was trying to survive what felt impossible. It was 200 in the morning when I realized something in my house had turned against me. The glow of the monitor washed the walls in cold light as I scrolled through playback on the Sentinel Cam NVR 760 Pro, a system I'd installed 8 months earlier to protect the freight business I built from nothing. Cameras in every hallway, motion alerts to my phone, automatic backups to Nimbus cloud storage encrypted end-to-end. But that night, the camera wasn't guarding a warehouse or catching thieves. It was catching my wife rehearsing sadness. On the screen, Lauren Hayes stood in front of the bathroom mirror wearing her silk pajama set, her hair tucked behind one ear. She lifted her chin, slightly inhaled, then forced her eyes to glisten. A tear slid down, perfectly timed. She stopped, leaned closer, studied her reflection, then did it again from another angle. Her lips trembled to practice to be spontaneous. I froze, watching it. For a long time, I couldn't breathe. My first thought wasn't, why is she crying? It was, who is she practicing for? I tagged the file, Mirror Rehearsal 01. Logged the timestamp, exported a copy to the off-site cloud folder insurance protocol, 256-bit encryption, just like we used for cargo audits. Funny how quickly professional habits apply to personal life when you start doubting someone. 3 weeks earlier, a break-in at our cold storage yard had pushed me to tighten security. Someone had tried stealing copper tubing from a refrigerated trailer, so I'd spent 2 nights rewiring cameras, setting up the automatic archive for compliance. I told my insurer the system would cut risk by 15%. I never imagined it would record my marriage rotting in 4K resolution. Back then, things still looked stable from the outside. Cole Logistics was running 20 trucks across 4 states, grossing about $3.4 million annually. My father started it with 1 used Freightliner and a dream. I'd turned it into something worth inheriting. Logistics is like faith. It runs on timing and documentation. Miss either, and you're out. At 6:40 a.m., I walked into the kitchen. Lauren Hayes was already there, pouring coffee into her favorite mug, the one with Boss Lady written in cursive gold. The expensive leather purse she'd bought last month sat on the counter beside her, close enough to touch like a totem she needed nearby. I wanted to mention what I saw, but didn't. Instead, I asked something small, something safe. "How's the LSAT prep going?" She didn't look up. "I'm exploring other options. Maybe investments, real estate." The air between us was thin and deliberate, the kind of silence couples keep when too much truth could collapse the room. I nodded, pretending to understand, and carried my travel mug to the garage. At 7:10, sitting behind the wheel of my pickup, I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror and made a quiet decision I wouldn't confront her yet. If she was rehearsing, then I'd start recording the real performance. I turned on the detailed audit log for the NVR and added a private admin note monitor, unusual access. In my world, numbers never lie. People sometimes do. By Tuesday, the tone of our conversations had shifted from casual curiosity to something sharp strategic. She came by the office in Mesa just before lunch unannounced, but smiling like nothing was wrong. The drivers nodded to her. She waved back, then walked straight into my office and asked to see the company structure documents. "It's still a single-member LLC, right?" she said. "In Arizona, that means you personally guarantee all loans, doesn't it?" I looked up from an invoice. "Technically, yes." "Why?" She leaned on the desk. "I just want to understand how things work. What happens to the assets if hypothetically you couldn't operate anymore?" I gave her the polite version of the truth. "Dad set it up that way for simplicity. Keeps taxes clean. Adding partners complicates insurance and liability." She nodded, pretending to take interest in the spreadsheets I pulled up. But I noticed how her pen paused at certain figures: depreciation schedules, equipment, values, the mortgage balance on our warehouse property. "Could you print those out for me?" she asked. "I'd like to look them over." That afternoon, she suggested coffee near Roosevelt Row. The place was crowded with freelancers and finance guys tapping on laptops. Lauren Hayes talked about diversifying investments, about how warehouse space near Tempe was appreciating fast. She said we could buy or lease another property under a joint account. "Wouldn't it make sense for us both to be on the paperwork this time?" Her tone was light, almost rehearsed. I suggested Derek Shaw, my operations manager, should join the meeting since he handled expansion logistics. She smiled tightly. "Let's keep this between us for now. Just exploring ideas." That night over dinner, she circled back to money. "Why isn't my name on the business account?" she asked, stirring her food but not eating. I set down my fork, because the accountant advised against it. "It's cleaner for taxes and protects both of us if something ever goes wrong." "Protects both of us or just you?" Her eyes stayed fixed on the plate. I started to answer, but she wrote something in her small notebook instead. The sound of her pen scratching paper felt louder than anything else in the room. After she went to bed, I sat in my office again, the glow from the dual monitors turning the walls a ghostly blue. I logged into the Nimbus Cloud Storage dashboard to check backup routines. Buried in the export directory was a new access log I didn't recognize mid-afternoon from our shared pair tab under her PairTech ID. She downloaded video segments labeled Kitchen and Hallway. I changed the admin password, immediately added two-factor authentication, and stared at the screen wondering if I was overreacting. But the image of her standing before that mirror wouldn't leave my head. People who rehearse their emotions don't stop after one performance. The next day, while cleaning the desk at home, I found a pile of glossy brochures for commercial real estate leases, investment opportunities, tax shelters. Slipped between them was a single folded receipt. Consultation. Porter Family Law. Phoenix. My chest tightened. Vanessa Porter. I'd heard the name once from another business owner, a divorce attorney who specialized in high-asset cases and emotional abuse narratives. I stared at that receipt for a long time, then photographed it and saved the image in a folder I labeled Red Flags. It wasn't anger. I felt it was recognition. She wasn't studying investment. She was building a case. That night, I couldn't sleep. The hum of the refrigerator sounded like the pulse of an engine idling before a long haul. From the dark hallway, I could see the faint green light of the camera blinking above the doorway. I whispered to myself, "She's not just researching. She's rehearsing the end." The next morning, Lauren Hayes' questions came faster, sharper, as if she'd memorized a script from someone else's mouth. And for the first time I realized how far ahead she might already be. It started small, like every fight that later feels staged. That weekend, Lauren wanted to visit Scottsdale. She said she needed air, maybe something new for the fall fundraiser. I should have known it wasn't about the fundraiser. In the boutique window, she stopped in front of a leather tote, a shade of brown, too perfect to ignore. Before I could ask the price, she handed her card over $1,700 without a word to me. On the drive home, I reminded her softly at first about the rule we'd agreed on. Any purchase over $600 should be discussed first, not because I wanted control, but because Cole Logistics was still tight on liquidity waiting for the Summit Health Partners contract to clear. She didn't argue immediately. She waited until we walked through the door. Then, under the hallway camera, she turned, raised her voice, and said, "So now I need your permission to buy a purse." Her tone was sharp, echoing against the walls. I froze for a second, realizing the perfect camera angle captured everything. Her trembling lip, my tired face. She was standing almost exactly where the lens from the hallway met the frame from the living room. I told myself I was imagining it. That night after dinner, the argument picked up again. "It's not about permission," I said. "It's about cash flow, about keeping the business stable." She stepped closer. "No, it's about you wanting to own everything. The money, the decisions, me." Her words hit harder than I expected. I backed away, trying to lower my tone. This is principle, Lauren, not control. But the moment had already been carved into something ugly. She covered her face, crying, and said, "What am I to you, an employee or a wife?" I didn't answer. The silence between us felt like static. I went to my office, needing space. Later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I opened the playback folder. The original clip ran 23 minutes. We argued, paused, tried to talk again. At the 21st minute, I'd raised my voice. I hadn't shouted, just frustration leaking through exhaustion. Then I noticed another file, one I hadn't made, sitting in the export folder. It was 2 minutes and 10 seconds long. It started the exact second my tone rose and ended with her tears. Nothing before, nothing after. I checked the access log. The file had been copied to our shared pair tab 20 minutes earlier under her PairTech ID, a perfect 90-second trailer. The next morning, I came downstairs. Lauren Hayes was in the kitchen, her purse resting near the coffee pot. Her phone lay face down on the counter. She positioned herself directly under the ceiling camera. I poured coffee and watched the reflection of the red recording light in the microwave glass. She glanced at me and smiled. "Long night working?" she asked. I nodded, pretending not to notice the choreography of her every move. The way she set the phone slightly angled toward me wasn't habit. It was precision. At the office that afternoon, I called Mark Bennett, a business attorney introduced by my mentor, Harold Pierce. I told him I had a question about data protection, kept it vague. Mark listened quietly, then said, "If this is about internal monitoring, preserve everything. Don't delete. Don't confront. The chain of custody will save you later." That night back home, I logged into the NVR and noticed something new. The kitchen and hallway cameras had been adjusted to record only on motion between 2:00 and 4:00 a.m. The exact window she was always awake. That meant no footage before or after any future arguments, just the middle where emotions ran highest. Only one user had the credentials to make those changes. Lauren D. I stared at the screen until the lines blurred. She wasn't just editing after the fact, she was rewriting reality from the source. I locked the system configuration, set up an independent log on a separate drive, and sat back in the chair until dawn, listening to the soft hum of the server fan. If she already knew how to manipulate the footage, the next move wouldn't come from emotion. It would come from strategy. I just didn't know yet whether that strategy would be legal, public, or both. By Monday night, I needed proof, something beyond my own paranoia. I stayed at the office long after the drivers left. Lights dimmed, coffee gone cold. The glow of the Sentinel Cam interface filled the room. I exported the last 100 days of access history and sorted by user. There it was. 49 login under the secondary profile Lauren D. Most between 2 Huzru and 4 Seldro a.m., exactly the hours she claimed to wander the house because of insomnia. Every entry led to one of 3 folders: kitchen, hallway, bedroom. Each download matched the nights we'd argued or barely spoken. After every download, she'd wipe traces from the local machine, except she didn't know the system kept invisible audit logs on the server side. I activated shadow logging so she'd never see me watching her back. Scrolling deeper, one file caught my eye. Kitchen argument trimmed, MPP4, size 122 megabytes. I compared it to the original footage stored in the raw directory. The original was over 6 GB, 25 minutes long. Her version only the 2-minute section where I raised my voice about the Summit Health Partners contract, telling her you can't just spend like that. Gone was the context, how I'd explained payroll fuel hedging and why cash flow was thin. The metadata showed export through QuickCut Pairtex, simplest editing software. She hadn't just learned to act, she'd learned to produce. In another folder labeled Voice Memos, I found an audio file called Legal Drafts 3.m4a. It wasn't part of the surveillance system. When I played it, the voice was unmistakable. Lauren Hayes talking to Kayla Morgan, her old friend from college. "He's too calm," Lauren said. "If I could get him angry a few times on camera, just enough to show a pattern, the court will believe I'm afraid." Kayla laughed, then said, "Push him, find what triggers him." I felt my throat tighten. I thought every argument we had was real, that we were both failing at communication. But it was all a design, a series of scenes in a movie I didn't know I was in. I transferred everything, videos, audio, access, log stow, and encrypted drive, and locked it in the company safe. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from Lauren. "Don't stay up so late. I worry about your health." The irony made me laugh out loud in the empty office. She knew I was online. The only way she could know that was by tracking remote login. She was watching me while pretending to care. The next morning, Derek Shaw, my operations manager, walked in early. "Boss," he said carefully, "I got a call from one of the Summit Health Partners reps. They've been hearing rumors about you and Lauren, something about a divorce." I set my coffee down. From where he shrugged. "Word spreads fast. Someone said she's talking to a lawyer in Phoenix. They're saying it might affect the contract." That was the moment I understood this wasn't about our marriage anymore. It was about leverage. She wasn't just preparing to leave. She was preparing to take everything with her and make me look unfit to keep it. That evening, I drove to the outskirts of Phoenix to see Harold Pierce, my mentor and friend. He'd built his logistics empire before I ever had a truck to my name. When I told him what I'd found, he didn't interrupt. He just listened, fingers tapping the table. When I finished, he said quietly, "You're not in a marriage anymore, son. You're in a campaign. Get a lawyer. Don't speak another word to her. Let the cameras tell your side." I left his house feeling both lighter and heavier. Lighter because someone finally believed me. Heavier because I knew what was coming next. That night, I wrote a note in my pocketbook. Day 1 of the war. Outside, the Phoenix air smelled like cold metal and wet asphalt. Somewhere inside our house, another recording light was blinking. I imagined Lauren Hayes asleep beside her phone, already drafting the next scene, already deciding how she'd make me look when the cameras rolled again. It took me 2 nights of combing through backups before I found it the missing piece. The file was buried deep in an archive directory time-stamped 2 months earlier, the same week I'd been out fixing a broken refrigeration unit at the warehouse. It was labeled simply, "Living Room Alt Feed." When I clicked play, the hallway camera flickered to life, showing a wide shot of the living room, the kind I'd installed for insurance reasons. The feed opened to Lauren and her friend Kayla Morgan sitting on the couch, wine glasses in hand, a laptop open between them. At first, their conversation was casual work gossip memories from college, but then it shifted. "The key is getting him angry on camera," Lauren said, swirling her wine as if she were describing a marketing strategy. Once I can make him raise his voice, the video will speak for itself. Kayla laughed. You always were good at setting a stage. If you've got a strong lawyer, the rest is just paperwork. My stomach dropped. The file quality was grainy, but their voices were clear, sharp, deliberate. It wasn't an argument or a misunderstanding. It was a blueprint. I scrubbed through the timeline, heart-pounding as the plan unfolded frame by frame. Then Lauren said something that froze me. I already talked to someone. And Vanessa Porter. She's the best in Phoenix when it comes to emotional abuse cases. She knows how to turn feelings into evidence. Vanessa Porter. The name from the folded receipt I'd found tucked among real estate brochures. The puzzle pieces aligned with a sickening precision. They talked about valuations, next breaking down numbers as if they were budgeting a film production. The company's worth at least $2.1 million, Kayla said. Half of that, and the house that's your freedom ticket. Lauren nodded. I've earned it. I've spent years in the background while he builds his empire. It's time I get what's mine. Hearing my life reduced to a price tag made something inside me twist. He makes all the money decisions. Lauren continued. He treats me like an assistant, not a partner. Kayla leaned back. Then make the world see what you see. Cut the clips, show the fear. Judges eat that up. Lauren smiled faintly. I'll keep the best parts, the moments when he snaps. I'll call it emotional abuse. He's always working, never home, never looking at me. The court will believe I was invisible. Don't forget the performance, Kayla Morgan said. Shaky hands, soft voice. Avoid eye contact. Make it real. I stopped the playback and just sat there. For the first time, I was afraid not of losing my business, but of realizing I'd been living with someone who'd studied me, who'd watched me like data, waiting to be processed. When I could move again, I copied the file 3 times. 1 to the company safe, 1 to my encrypted drive, and 1 uploaded to the Nimbus cloud storage server under a private key. Then I called Mark Bennett. He listened as I described everything. When I finished, there was a long silence. You're holding a bomb, Ethan, he said finally. When she files, everything will freeze your accounts, your assets, your credibility. Get ready for that, and do not confront her. Let her move first. That night I drove home. Late headlights sweeping over the quiet cul-de-sac. When I walked in the hallway, camera's power light was off. Only the red status LED blinked faintly. A camera disconnected from the network. Lauren Hayes was in the kitchen, glass of wine in hand. You're home late, she said. I had work, I answered. She tilted her head. You still trust your technology as much as people. More, I said. At least technology tells the truth if the person installing it knows what they're doing. She smiled, slow and cold. We'll see about that. The silence that followed felt final. I went upstairs, opened my notebook, and wrote, Begin full system backup. Prepare for worst-case scenario. That was the moment I understood this wasn't about love or even revenge. It was about control. And she had no idea how much of that I'd already taken back. The war arrived on a Monday morning. I came home from a weekend run to the warehouse. And there it was, a large manila envelope on the kitchen counter right where she'd practiced her tears months ago. Inside were 14 pages and a short note written in her careful handwriting. I need peace. Don't look for me. The petition accused me of emotional abuse, financial control, and intimidation. It demanded half the business, the house, both vehicles and monthly support payments in accordance with marital standards. Reading it felt like swallowing metal. Every sentence was a weapon polished for the courtroom. By noon, I was sitting in Mark Bennett's office. I handed him the external drive containing logs, the conversation with Kayla, and copies of the system backups. He skimmed the petition, his expression unreadable. They've got videos, he said finally. And Vanessa Porter's representing her. She's the kind of attorney who wins. Sympathy before facts. We're not fighting feelings here. We're fighting a narrative. So our only chance is structure and data. Keep quiet. No public statements, no arguments. The less emotion, the better." I nodded. "And if she goes public, then we let her. You'll have the receipts." The next morning, the hammer fell. The Maricopa County Court granted an emergency motion filed by her attorney, freezing all joint accounts to prevent asset concealment. I couldn't touch the business reserves. Payroll had to wait for judicial review. I'd built coal logistics from 1 truck to 20, and now I couldn't even pay my drivers without permission. By noon, rumors spread like fire through the logistics network. Derek Shaw came to my office, his face tight. "Boss, some of the guys are nervous. They're hearing you're getting divorced, that the business is collapsing. High Plains Freight's been calling around saying they're ready to step in if coal logistics folds." The phrase made my jaw clench. High Plains had been circling for years waiting for a crack, and now Lauren Hayes had given them one. That afternoon, I watched contracts unravel in real time. The medical supply distributor pulled out of negotiations. The Summit Health Partners representative stopped replying to emails. Even the National Parcel Service liaison, who had once been enthusiastic, suddenly went cold. In logistics, perception is everything. No one wants to trust their freight to a man whose name appears next to domestic abuse allegations. That night, I found her online under an anonymous profile. The post was short, almost poetic. A woman finally finding her voice after years of being silenced. It didn't name me, but it didn't have to. People recognized the story. The comments poured in praise empathy, words like brave and survivor. I scrolled through them, my chest tightening with a mix of anger and disbelief. Mark Bennett called around midnight. "Don't react," he said. "If she chooses the court of public opinion, let her have it. You stick to the logs. When she performs for the crowd, you collect for the judge." I closed my laptop, packed a bag, and drove to a hotel near Phoenix Sky Harbor International. The hum of planes outside the window matched the buzz in my head. I set up my laptop and hard drive on the small desk, opened the file labeled Kayla Call, MP40, and listened again to Lauren's voice. "The court will believe me as long as I cry at the right moment." I replayed it twice, each time feeling the words dig deeper. Then I opened my notebook and wrote a single line beneath the last entry. "From today on, I will not speak in emotion again, only in evidence." Outside, the nightlights flickered over the runway like signals waiting for clearance. And somewhere out there, Lauren was already setting the stage for the next act. But this time, I was ready to record every second of it. Friday, in downtown Phoenix. The glass-walled conference room inside Vanessa Porter's office looked like a set built to make people doubt themselves. A small camera on a tripod recorded everything. An unnecessary flourish meant to remind me who they believed owned the narrative. Lauren Hayes arrived in a soft gray dress, hair pulled back, eyes shadowed as if she hadn't slept in weeks. Her hands trembled when she poured water. It was convincing in the way rehearsals often are. Vanessa spread folders across the table with the calm of someone who has practiced this speech 100 times. "We have video evidence of threats and controlling behavior," she said, tapping a list. "For everyone's sake, we'd prefer a settlement." She slid over a valuation $2.1 million for coal logistics and a neat plan to split it down the middle. I would keep the trucks and the headache. She would take half the equity of the house and a monthly check. Mark Bennett sat beside me impassive. "Let's see the videos," he said. Vanessa nodded to her assistant. The screen lit up with the kitchen scene I already knew by heart, but now it played like a trailer cut to sell a film. It began with my voice tightening about the purse and cash flow. It ended on her tears. No setup, no context. A faint swell of music bled from the speakers as if the room itself were trying to sway. Lauren dabbed her eyes precisely when the image lingered on her face. She didn't look at me. Mark took notes the entire time, never once flinching. "Do you have the original files?" he asked. "They were recorded on his own system. Vanessa said with a careful smile. If there were any problems, you'd think he'd say so. She turned to me. Mr. Cole installed the cameras, didn't you? I almost laughed. I did. Then you understand why their authenticity speaks for itself. I stared at the screen, remembering the toggled motion windows between 2 and 4 a.m. The missing beginnings and endings, the way a story changes when you remove the parts where people apologize. Mark closed his notebook. We won't be settling today. Vanessa's voice softened. Dangerous in that gentle way. We'll see you in court. You don't know who you're up against. Mark stood. I do, he said. Someone who forgot who set up the system she's using. We left without another word. That night at our old bar in Roosevelt Row, Harold Pierce asked if I was ready for 3 months of hell. I told him I was as long as the truth had somewhere to live. On the drive back to the hotel, Mark Bennett called to confirm he'd retained Dr. Emily Chen, a forensic analyst from the university. Bring me every bite, he said. We'll show the court what edits look like when you shine a flashlight through the metadata. I slept hardly at all, replaying in my head the way Lauren Hayes timed her breath with the cut. October brought a clear sky and a crowd. The gallery was full of business owners, drivers in work boots, and a few reporters hunting a headline. Judge Diane Caldwell presided, posture, straight expression, clean of indulgence. She didn't reward theatrics. You could feel it in the way the room quieted when she walked in. Vanessa Porter opened with a story about a woman isolated in her own home, watched by cameras controlled by money. Then the screens came to life. 3 videos, each a perfect slice of me at my worst, exhausted, clipped, impatient. Lauren took the stand with a voice just above a whisper, describing nights spent under surveillance. Stomach knotted, never sure how I might react. The room leaned toward her. I kept my eyes forward and my hands folded, reminding myself there were 20 minutes missing from every one of those clips. Mark rose slowly. We'd like to address the providence, he said. He handed up a document packet. These are access logs generated by the system administrator account, which belongs to Mr. Cole. They show 49 logins to the surveillance console under a secondary user over the last 100 days, almost all between 2 and 4 a.m., and nearly all followed by file exports. He walked the court through the timestamps, the IP addresses, the sequence of downloads. The room shifted. Judge Caldwell asked him to pause so she could review the packet herself. Then Mark called Dr. Emily Chen. She brought clean slides and a steady presence explaining how video files carry signatures, encoders render times creation and modification dates. She showed how the edited sequences originated after downloads from my server, then were trimmed and re-exported through QuickCut. She pointed to splices where ambient audio skipped, where waveform continuity broke. Vanessa objected twice. Both were overruled. Lauren's posture tightened, a hand pressing flat to the table. Mark turned to the last monitor. One more exhibit, he said. A recording from the living room feed. He played the conversation I had found between Lauren and Kayla. Their voices carried across the courtroom matter of fact and, unhurried, make him angry. Show the fear a lawyer who turns feelings into proof. When it ended, the silence felt heavier than anything that had preceded it. Vanessa argued the recording was invasive. Mark didn't raise his voice. Counsel presented secret recordings gathered in the home as reliable when they advanced her story, he said. She can't discard the ones that contradict it. The judge nodded. Proceed. Mark Bennett looked at me and lifted his chin. I stood. Your Honor, I said steady. She forgot who installed the cameras. I handed over the Nimbus Cloud storage archive, the original full recordings with server-side timestamps and integrity checks. Judge Diane Caldwell requested headphones and watched the complete kitchen argument from start to finish. She heard the part where I apologized and explained the Summit Health Partners flow. She heard the part where the temperature in the room came down. When she removed the headphones, the oxygen in the courtroom seemed to return. Lauren Hayes stared at the table motionless. The judge announced a short recess to deliberate. Mark placed a hand on my shoulder as we stepped into the corridor. "Breathe," he said. "You did what you came to do." Outside, the air smelled like rain, and for the first time in months, I let myself believe there might be a way through. The next morning, the gallery was quieter, as if everyone understood the performance was over. Mark and I sat at the defense table, and I felt the odd calm that sometimes follows a near miss in traffic. Judge Caldwell read her decision without theatrics. The plaintiff submitted altered recordings and made representations inconsistent with the totality of the evidence. She said this court dismisses her petition in full and refers the matter to the district attorney for review of potential charges relating to falsification and false statements. The gavel knocked once. Vanessa Porter rose to protest and was cut short. Counselor, the judge, said, "This is not theater. Sit down." Vanessa apologized to the court and did as she was told. When we adjourned, Lauren approached, eyes flat and bright. "You always know how to win," she said softly, "even when there's nothing left to keep." I didn't answer. A bailiff stood nearby waiting to escort her to a side office. She turned and walked away. That afternoon at Mark Bennett's office, he handed me certified copies of the order releasing the accounts and restoring operational control of coal logistics. "Congratulations," he said, not smiling. "Stay quiet for a week. Reporters will call. I'll handle them." I signed a media authorization and left by the back stairwell. The story found daylight anyway. A local piece ran the following morning, a measured headline about a business owner cleared by digital evidence. Friends texted congratulations. I couldn't quite absorb relief pressed against exhaustion until both felt like the same hollow weight. The district attorney's office contacted me for a statement. I brought the same drive, the same logs, and answered the same questions I'd been answering for months. 4 weeks later, the office notified me that Lauren had accepted a plea, 3 years probation, 120 hours of community service, and a conviction for presenting false evidence. The bar for law school would not be crossed. I read the email twice, then closed my laptop. That evening, I returned to the cold storage yard. The compressors thudded steadily, a sound that used to keep me awake and now settled me. I stood under the green blink of a new camera and thought of what the old ones had seen. Technology doesn't betray anyone. It just keeps records. People decide what to do with them. I wrote one line in my notebook. Day 1 of freedom, and the first day the house feels truly empty. 4 months passed, and the yard felt alive again. The Summit Health Partners contract cleared. Midwest Grocers signed on for refrigerated lanes across the Sonoran corridor. Derek Shaw knocked on my office door before sunrise, grinning a sheet in his hand. "National Parcel Service wants to pilot a long-haul, cold route," he said. "They want to see if we can turn it faster than the competition." I initialed the dispatch board, and for a moment the pen felt heavier than it should have, like it was writing a life back into place. A letter arrived from Mark Bennett that afternoon, his final invoice, and a short note in his own hand. "You didn't win because of the tech. You won because you insisted on the whole picture." I slid it into a drawer where I keep things worth rereading on bad